Right, we're back with you tonight here on In Focus, and thanks for staying on. An Eastern Cape teenager from the Mazizini area in Tsolo has been arrested for the murder of an 83-year-old woman. The 16-year-old, who is the grandson of the victim, is suspected to be part of a group on horseback that stoned the elderly woman to death. Khula Community Development Project activist Petros Majola joining us for more on that. Good to have you, Majola, and thank you very much for coming on. It's a rather unfortunate development in the community and in society at large. What is going on?
Good evening to you and the viewers. I must say that the country is under siege because every day we get reports of those heinous crimes. And it is very disappointing that children in most of these cases are involved. And sometimes I want to believe that because they know that they are not taken through the criminal justice system, but through the child justice system, and they don't get treated as criminals, but would rather be perhaps directed to the diversion programs. So that could be one of the reasons why children can do it carelessly, or at some point the adult persons would ask children to commit crime. So we are in that danger as the society, because this is not the only child or the first child who does this. Like in Utenek, we'll be burying a learner who was also stabbed to death by a 17-year-old. So that is the challenge, that everybody knows the laws of the country, and they know that an underage kid would be treated differently from a normal criminal justice system.
Yeah. What do we know about these masked men on horseback who are stoning 83-year-old women? What is the psychology of this grouping? What are their issues and what are they dealing with?
I think initially when people were talking about these men in horsebacks, it was before this 16-year-old was arrested. Now, because some of the report of what has happened, people got it from this very same 16-year-old. Now, I want to take that privilege of assuming that there was no man in or riding horses who came to kill this woman, I suspect. But as the case unfolds, as the investigation takes a step forward, maybe we'll hear something very, very different from what we had at the beginning.
Now, you are, of course, in the community development space. This tells us there is something that needs some degree of repair, in fact, a large degree of repair in communities. You put it as a nation under siege, but there is, of course, a whole lot more that needs to happen, especially when it comes to the development of young people in the area.
The other thing is that when you look at the development or even instilling values in our children, parents happen to move back and open a distance between them and their kids. They always put a blame on the government side. And I say sometimes without taking sides, but we should not put a blame on government, because each and every household, they have got their own ways of instilling values, of grooming and molding their own children. But as the children's rights were introduced in the country, seemingly children misunderstood the role and the meaning of children's rights. They forgot about the responsibilities. They only talk about the rights. And now the parents, because we talk mostly about assault and corporal punishment, and now when we are saying, as a parent, you cannot assault, you cannot beat up your child in an effort of putting the child on the right track. Now parents are saying government has taken our parental role away, and therefore we have no say to our own children. But I still maintain that parents have got the responsibility of molding their own children so that at the end of the day, a child can know, a child can understand the values of that particular household, as opposed to saying government must take responsibility. Why are we outsourcing this? Because if you don't do it at home, the peers will do it on the street, and then we'll end up being in the situation where we are finding ourselves in today.
These are grandmothers. I mean, one would have to ask whether grandmothers would be able to carry that responsibility of raising these teenagers.
The grandmothers would never see anything wrong with their grandchildren. I'm saying it from experience. In some of the cases where we found a grandmother being murdered by a grandchild, the family would say, we have asked Umama to get rid of this young man or this boy. And Umama said, there's no rubbish bin for my grandchild. I cannot throw my grandchild away. But at the end of the day, the very same woman would be killed by this person. But there's no way that we can throw them away. We don't have a rubbish bin anyway for our children, but we need to look very soft when we look at the Child Justice Act, because the Child Justice Act makes us to believe that when a child has committed a crime today, there are still chances of learning from that mistake, and therefore a child must always be given a second chance. Now, when a child below the age of 18 has committed crime, no matter how bad is it, but that child has to be processed by a probation officer, that is the social worker who deals with children who are in conflict with the law, so that they can present the report to court and say, these are my findings. And then the court determines whether or not to allow this child or to grant the child a bail. But when you look outside in the country, most of the young men who carry firearms, who carry dangerous weapons, are children below the age of 18. And now we have to apply the Child Justice Act because of their age.
Yeah.
But we don't look at how far have they developed in terms of being involved in criminal activities.
The Child Justice Act, like pretty much our criminal justice system, is more geared toward restorative justice. So the approach is really not to be punitive, but it is to reconcile, it is to reintegrate offenders into society rather than retribution. Are you saying that that would be the wrong approach in that instance when a teenager would have been a repeat offender?
Well, each case is treated in its own merits. But I must say that the purpose of the Child Justice Act is to afford a child a second chance, so that we don't quickly judge. We don't take the child and send the child to prison. But what we are doing is to give that child an opportunity to learn from the mistake, and if possible, for that child to go back to school and continue until a child obtains the necessary qualification so that the child can be on his or her own. But we need to treat each case not the same as the other one. That's why I say each case is treated in its own merits. Because when a child is not the first-time offender, then it means that while the child was given a chance to learn from his or her mistakes, he never learned. And then we don't have to keep that child outside of the prison until he does something worth done before.
But Majola, let me appreciate you. Thank you very much for coming on and your intervention this evening as Petros Majola of the Khula Community Development Project.